today's series is the focus on resources available through the Neighborhood Impact Investment Fund, also known as NIF, and resources available through the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. And our presenters today will give us the information that will help those on this call understand how to access these resources. My name is Eric Lee. I am a Neighborhood Development Officer for Department of Housing Community Development. We also have our Director of Marketing Outreach, Teresa Stevens, and we have a colleague, also Neighborhood Development Officer, Kelly Bacala, and we're here to facilitate today's webinar. This session is being recorded. And so if you have not already seen that on your screen where you check OK, please check OK for the recording. We will also be taking questions at the end of the presentations, but we encourage you to put questions in the chat. And some of the questions may be answered during the presentation, but we will also address the questions after the presentation. So again, we thank you for participating. And we're going to start today's webinar with the Neighborhood Impact Investment Fund and Mark Kaufman's team. Mark, thank you for participating in today's webinar, and we look forward to hearing what you have to present.
Great. Thank you, and thank you everybody for attending. Thanks to DHCD for hosting. My name is Mark Kaufman. I'm the president of the Neighborhood Impact Investment Fund. I'm just by way of background, a native Baltimorean, lived here pretty much my whole life. Spent a bunch of time in banking and then in the public sector with the state and the federal government before joining the community development space at a CDFI, and was recruited to come stand up the fund about 3.5 years ago. So it's a pleasure to be here, and it's obviously a pleasure to work with all folks in the city and try to advance community development across the city and through this platform. Let me try to do a quick beginning. I'll do an overview of the fund and explain kind of where we are. I'll let my partner, Laurie Glass, who's been at this since, I guess, 2 months after I started, and has been with me every step of the way, talk about some of the products that we have for direct investment. And then I also want to double back and talk about some partnerships that we have that also may provide resources that are, that we've entered into to help provide resources for some of the work that many of you do. Let me quickly see if I can make the screen share thing work. So hang on. Should be this one. Okay, does that, can somebody see that? Okay, good. Let's now see if I can find the page down. Page down. Hang on one sec. There we go. How do I go back up? There we go. Okay. So by way of background, NIF was launched in 2019. So we're about 3.5 years old. We are a mission-driven investment fund focused on delivering capital and promoting inclusive, equitable growth in the city. We're an entirely place-based fund, and I'll explain what that means. But all of our work is done in the city and actually in a subset of the city. We're an independent organization that was set up by the city, and we are, as I said, independent as a lending organization, but we are structured to align with Baltimore city government and with its priorities. We have a 13-member board right now. 3 of them are city officials. And we obviously share a strong relationship with DHCD and have really since inception. They helped set up the fund and have a seat on our board. Again, I mentioned we're a place-based fund. We're focused on a set of neighborhoods I'll explain. Our lending products are focused on delivering impact, filling gaps, and really trying to complement existing resources. We're trying to catalyze activity, help development opportunities, also help bring investors and bring capital to the city beyond just our own. We were certified, we're pleased we were certified by the U.S. Treasury about a year ago now as a community development financial institution. So we're part of that network as well. I mentioned we're a place-based fund, so we are eligible to invest in about 65% of the city. On the screen, there are all the yellow areas. Sort of essentially it's the black butterfly as it's come to be known. For folks that have lived here, none of these areas will be surprising, but we are only eligible to invest in this portion of the city. It's about 65% of the city. It's highly diverse. Obviously, it's suffered for really my whole lifetime from a lack of investment across the city. And these neighborhoods, suffer from what is really a legacy of outright racism. Neighborhoods is some third-party research neighborhoods that are more than 80% minority, which all of ours are, receive about a quarter of the investment as neighborhoods that have less than 40% minority population, which are largely the areas we don't invest in. We are aligned with the opportunity zones. So if any of you are looking or marketing transactions or looking at transactions that are opportunity zone focused, 40 of the 42 opportunity zones fall in whole or in part in our footprint. There's a little bit of in and out because opportunity zones are done by census tract and we're done by neighborhood. But for all intents and purposes, all the opportunity zones except for downtown and Port Covington are within our footprint. And we do try to invest in alignment with these dark areas, which are the DHCD impact investment areas. And there is a searchable map on our website where you can put in the street address and see it, make sure that it's eligible. Again, we've been at it for about 3.5 years. Just as an update, we've closed about 25 transactions. We've committed over $30 million. That investment has catalyzed over 125 million of other investment in transactions. I'm pleased to say we've been able to touch all of the impact investment areas now with closed loans across the city. There's dots on the map that cover that highlight many of the areas where we have loans. We've done. We like to say we're kind of place-based, and so we're product agnostic. We're fixed on place, and so we need to be flexible on product. So we've done loans in all sectors: housing, commercial, community facilities, done senior loans, subordinate loans. We really try to make loans work within the space within which we are fixed. And again, about over 50% of our borrowers are minority owned or led. In terms of impact and how we look at deals beyond just financial, again, all of the investments we make need to be in the eligible investment areas. We look for borrowers that have a demonstrated need for our products and an inability to obtain financing on commercially available terms in the market. We're not looking to drive other people out of Baltimore by any means in order to deploy capital. We really want to be a catalyst to bring capital in. And so we look beyond that at 4 different areas. We try to hit at least 2 of them. We want transactions that promote diverse, equitable, and inclusive growth. We want transactions that are aligned with a community plan, preferably, and/or are aligned with the impact investment area strategy at DHCD. We don't want to be doing sort of one-off transactions. And we look for transactions that support core assets or green shoots, as we'd like to call them, but essentially transactions that can catalyze growth by their either attachment to key assets, or locations in key business corridors. So we're on Pennsylvania Avenue. We've done deals on North Avenue. We did a transaction on the old Stadium Place site, places where our investment can not only help a particular transaction, but also hopefully catalyze broader growth. And then I mentioned that we want to be complementary. We really look for transactions, if possible, where we can leverage another CDFI, community development lender such as ourselves, or some other mission intermediary. More than half of our loans are with other lenders or partners who have the same mission focus and that we do. And so we really look to try to make transactions work and to make it kind of safe to get in the water for folks. And by doing that, we really look to have partners in the transactions that we have. We've sort of deployed capital along 2 lines. The majority of what we do is direct scaled investment. And in a sec, I'll turn it over to Lori to talk about the kinds of investments we make. That's about 80% of our transactions, and these are direct investments into projects. That's not everything. On the other hand, we can't be everything to everybody. So we really have focus there. At the same time, we've tried to recognize what we can do effectively on our own and what we can best do with partners. So for areas where we don't think we're particularly well set up to do that on our own, we've looked to support partnerships. So I'll pick it up at the end and explain those, but we've supported a range of small business lenders. We've got a small development loan program that I'll talk about. And then during the PPP cycle, we went out and essentially gave money to another nonprofit lender to use to make PPP loans a national lender, to get them into the market to try to expand the opportunity on the PPP side. So, we have a capital pool. We are, I think I skipped this, we're capitalized primarily by a $51 million loan that we got from the city. So we owe the money back, but we have the liquidity. And so again, we try to use that where we can as a small staff on larger scale projects, and where the transactions are smaller, be they small business loans, small development loans that require more infrastructure and staff than NIF has, we've tried to partner to support other providers to try to bring those products to market in our footprint as well. And again, all of the capital is deployed within the NIF footprint. So with that backdrop, I'm going to try to click slides. So maybe a little, Laurie, if you let me know when, but let me turn it over to Laurie to talk about, to introduce herself and talk a little bit about what we do on the direct side. You're on mute.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. So good to be here today presenting to residents in the city, and then also to some of the city agencies. As Mark said, my name's Lori Glass. I'm the chief lender for the NIF fund. And I've spent my entire career working in neighborhoods. Long ago when I finished grad school, I started at a bank, but then I had the good fortune of working in a neighborhood branch for that bank, and really was able to see how developers and nonprofits were able to organize money to revitalize their communities. And having the opportunity to work on several projects that really lit a fire for me. And after leaving the bank, I began to work with nonprofit or public agencies, in Philadelphia, in Washington, D.C., and now in Baltimore on projects that are designed to revitalize neighborhoods. I want to give you an example of the work that we do in some of the communities that we work in. Mark mentioned that we're a place-based fund, and as a place-based fund, we have communities that are deemed eligible for funding by NIF, and it's as easy as going to our website. We have a map where you can geocode your address and determine eligibility. Once you understand that the neighborhood is eligible, then you begin the process of engaging with NIF. Last week, we closed a loan adjacent to Coppin State University. And we began that conversation with two nonprofits in that community over a year ago. And I bring that up because it's a really good example of what comprehensive neighborhood revitalization is. And we actually provided funding for a food hall that's going to go into a space on North Avenue adjacent to Coppin State. In that same neighborhood, in that same community, we have a NHS of Baltimore that is working on revitalizing and rehabbing single-family homes. That neighborhood also has a new bank in its community, and that bank branch was put there as part of an effort to revitalize the community. So I say that to say NIF is interested in building communities, and We look at housing loans, we look at apartment buildings, we look at grocery stores, we look at food halls. We go across sectors to build communities, and that's the beauty of working on a place-based strategy such as we have at NIF. The first slide I want to talk about is slide 8, which is types of financing. And you'll notice here that we have 5 different types of financing, and we've structured our products so that you are able to come to NIF at any stage in the development process or in the development life cycle for your project. So we have bridge loans, which I'll talk about separately, but we can actually begin working with you on the pre-development phase of your project, moving on to acquisition, construction, and then finally with term loans. This allows you to have one source of debt capital for your project um, that can work with you from beginning to end. We often bring in other capital providers, and we often are working in concert with different sources of subsidy. But having the benefit of being able to work with one organization from pre-development all the way through term or permanent loan is very helpful. So just a couple of comments. Pre-development loans, they're typically going to be short-term loans, and they're used really for costs such as early stage engineering costs, design costs, environmental. These are all of the early stage things that are required before you can move to the next stage. Regarding acquisition loans, the uses of our loan proceeds will be to purchase either acquisition of vacant land, but it can also be the acquisition of an existing building, either one that is needing rehab, or the idea of your repositioning that property to make it safer, to prepare it for additional financing. Regarding construction loans, that's pretty straightforward. Although NIF does offer a construction loan product, I would say that that loan product is, at this point, one that we use less often because of the complexities, especially with the small developer rehab loan. However, we have developed 2 partnerships, one which is the DASH program, which Mark will talk about later. And that program is specifically developed to work with smaller developers who are rehabbing 2 to 3 row homes at a time. Our term loans are used to provide longer term financing. So once the construction is complete and the project begins to throw off cash flow, and you have cash flow sufficient to repay the loan, we're able to provide longer term financing. This is often used again with other sources of subsidy. So those are the 4 basic types of loans and the uses of those proceeds. The bridge loans I wanted to talk about separately, because bridge loans can be used for any of these uses that I've talked about so far. But the key for our bridge lending is that you as an organization, either as a not-for-profit or as a member in a joint venture with a not-for-profit, has some type of grant or subsidy available for the project. And rather than waiting, say, a year for you to cobble together all of your sources of capital for the project, we're able to provide bridge funding today so you can start moving on your project. So many, and I would say 90% of the transactions that we do, they do have some sort of subsidy or grant involved. And our bridge loan product is really designed to take that source of subsidy, provide cash for it today so as to accelerate the timeline for projects. Mark, let's go to the next slide. Mark, let's go to the next slide. Okay. Mark will go to the next slide, but I can talk through
I'm
it.
trying, keep going.
Yeah, I'll keep going. So the next slide is it's really a slide designed to give you all a feel for what are the steps that are undertaken both in the loan inquiry and the loan application and approval process. And I've tried to narrow it down or categorize it into 4 major steps. But let me say, first of all, that the loan inquiry and the loan approval process is all about building relationships. And that's one of the key things that we do as a local financing organization is we're looking to build relationships with developers, with civic organizations that are representing residents. We're looking to build relationships with key sources of subsidy. On the public side, we're also looking to build relationships with foundations. And we bring all of that to bear on informing the work that we do during the loan approval inquiry process. So the first step is inquiry and eligibility. I've talked about eligibility. In terms of the size of our loans, typically they're going to range from 500,000 to up to $3 million. Our rates, this is a really important point now as we're in a rising interest rate environment, is our rates are 4.75%. You'll find that that's a very competitive rate. And even more importantly, we're able to provide our rates on a fixed basis. So we do not provide floating term rates unless, it would be an anomaly or an exception. I think out of the 25 or so loans we've completed, we only have 1 loan that's a floating rate loan. But having this fixed source of capital becomes increasingly important in the environment we're in today, given that rates are increasing. So we think that as you're looking at your construction budget, you're looking at your overall project budget, that it's to your advantage to really seek funding that's going to provide an assurance that your cost of interest is not going to increase substantially over the life of the project and cause problems for you. Terms can range up to 10 years. Typically with the pre-development loans that I mentioned in the last slide, our terms are typically going to be 12 to 18 months. The construction loan would depend on the complexity of the project, but I would say the shortest time frame would likely be a year. Our 10-year loans on the long end would be for projects that have been completed, they've been leased up, and they're starting to generate sufficient cash flow to repay our loans. So we can book a loan up to 10 years. We can often lengthen the amortization period so that you can have smaller or lower monthly debt service payments. The other thing I wanted to mention is a feature of our loans is there is no prepayment penalty. So let's say, you have a 5-year loan and in year 3, you've generated sufficient cash flow to repay the loan, or you've had some grant or subsidy come in. um, allows you to have the ability to prepay the loan. We'll do that with no prepayment fee, and we often find that borrowers like that feature. Step two would be underwriting. And at this stage, we are taking a closer look at the project, the description of the project. Our underwriting includes an analysis of the impact of the project. So, as our name suggests, Neighborhood Impact Investments Fund, we're looking to assure that our dollars are being used to make meaningful impact in the communities we serve. And we measure that by looking at things like the number of units of new housing being provided or rehabbed housing, whether or not the project, if it's housing, is restricted to certain targeted income bands. If it's a grocery store, we're looking to see, we haven't done a grocery store, but if we were, we would be looking to see that it's a food store that's providing fresh food for the community. On the community facility side, which would be things like buildings for neighborhood services. It could be arts, it could be education. We recently provided a community facility loan for Odell's, the old nightclub. That project is actually the building is being repurposed to provide education to public school children for after school activities. So we were looking to determine the quality of the after school programming that was offered and to determine whether the services being offered by the nonprofits were services that were quality. So those are some of the things that we look at when we're looking at impact. So we're looking at impact, we're looking at the project description. I noted here the budget, and you know how important the budget is. So um, as Mark mentioned, we're a CDFI, a Community Development Financial Institution. And what that means is we're not only providing dollars, but we're also working side by side with you to really improve, um, crystallize the idea that you have for your project to make it to something that's a viable project that can be financed. So we are looking at the budget. We're taking a fine tooth comb to look at the budget. We're comparing the budget with what we've seen in the market, given the deals that we've looked at. And we're providing feedback. So it's an iterative process, the underwriting process. You don't just submit a budget, we approve it or send it back. We actually have conversations and several iterations before we get to an approved budget. Sources and uses, we've talked about some of the uses of funds on the prior slide, but in terms of sources, those sources could be equity from the borrower. It could also be grant proceeds from the state or the city. It could be proceeds from a grant from a foundation. And it could be debt from another organization where we're working on a co-lending relationship. So we're looking very closely at the uses of funds, but also at where are those sources of funds coming from. We would like to have borrowers who have some um, investment in the projects that they are looking to develop. So we would like to see a developer owner providing some portion of the total project cost coming out of their pocket, they're off of their balance sheet. If it's a nonprofit, we're looking to see if that nonprofit has been able to raise subsidy and grant dollars that are dedicated to the project. And we would consider that part of their equity in the project. We're always looking. The next bullet is borrower experience and track record. We do not accept on a very limited basis, and so far we have not provided any like pure startup loans to an organization or a person with no track record. There's typically some track record of not only projects, but projects that are of the same or similar size as the project for which you're looking for financing. Some of our developers have not been like the primary developer on a project, but they've worked as a consultant or as a limited partner with a larger institution and have gained their experience and track record that way. So we look at all of those things to really determine the credentials that the organization has in order to complete the project. In terms of borrower experience, some organizations have, the luxury of having staff that bring those credentials, and then others bring it on a consulting basis, and we'll consider both. In terms of financial statements, we're typically looking for 3 years of financial statements. For nonprofits, it could be 990. For for-profit entities, we typically look for a CPA prepared financial statement, and that can be one that's simply a compilation by a CPA. But as you become a more experienced borrower, we're actually hoping that you'll move towards having reviewed or actually audited financials. But we do require financial statements not only at the beginning of the project, but we have reporting requirements each year. So we would look for those. In terms of approval, our loan committee meets monthly. We include in our approvals reporting and performance covenants. We structure the loan. Key things in terms of restructuring the loan would be repayment and the amount of advances. In terms of collateral, our pre-development loans typically, they can be secured or unsecured. Our bridge loans are typically either unsecured. If it's real estate related, we may have a negative pledge. And then sometimes, depending on the strength of the borrower, we actually may secure that loan as well. For loans to private individuals, LLCs, corporations, we're going to require either a personal or corporate guarantee. And then the last step, step 4, and let me just say, to get to step 4, it's probably at a minimum an 8-week process. There are instances that we may be able to move quicker. If there's like a deadline looming with a purchase contract, we would, accelerate to the extent that so we can meet deadlines. But typically it's going to take at least 8 weeks. And most often it's going to take longer than that. So we always encourage organizations to begin talking with us early so that we can meet deadlines and benchmarks for the group. In terms of closing, if the loan is approved and we move to closing, it's at that point that you would pay a 1.5% origination fee. We also require that the borrower pay for loan document preparation. We typically are going to require a legal opinion by the borrower's counsel. And so these are just key points that I wanted to mention in the closing. There's really no cost to apply for our loan, to apply for loans with us. We do have a minimal, like $1,000 term sheet acceptance fee, but that comes well after the loan inquiry and the actual review of the project. So that's a summary of not only the types of loans that we do, but also the approval process. Um, the next thing I'd like to do is just show you quickly, how are we on time?
Um, we need to close up because we have another presenter behind you.
Okay.
And so we
All
need to
right.
get the time.
There are a couple of slides that I've provided to give you some feedback or some examples of the projects. And I think the slides will be available to you, but you can definitely take a look at the different examples. I want to wrap up and throw it back to Mark because he does want to close up with some conversations about some of our partners. So thank you.
Thanks, Laurie. Yeah, so here's so these, you'll see quickly, these are large scale projects. They're, $5-10 million deals. This one's on North Avenue. The last one's in Southwest Baltimore for a restaurant and food facility. This is a shopping center. It's a $6.5 million transaction. We recently closed a $6 million acquisition. It was part of bridge loan as part of an acquisition of the Area 405 building. So these are large transactions. And, with $50 million of capital and not a lot of staff, those are transactions that we really can try to target on our own. I mentioned we've also tried to focus on some partnerships that can help in other types of loans. We are not a small business lender. We're not a business lender. So we've entered into 2 transactions where we've lent to other lenders. Baltimore Community Lending, who many of you know, has a business lending arm. We're a large lender to BCL, or a lender to BCL. Would encourage you to please reach out there to our partner. We've also made a loan to Arcturus Impact Investors. They're a much larger focused business loan fund. Transactions there are about $1 million and up. We committed capital along with Able so that Arcturus has a $25 million commitment to Baltimore City to business loans in our footprint. And then lastly, on the small developer side, for transactions that are smaller than the ones we described, loans that are smaller than sort of $500,000-ish. We helped create the Dash Fund. Let me just spend a second on that. Dash is a freestanding fund run by the National Community Stabilization Trust. It's a $3 million fund that we helped stand up with funding from NIF and also some support from DHCD. The fund exists solely to fund small homeownership, acquisition rehab transactions to create homeownership opportunities in our footprint. It's run by Dominion Financial Services, which is a large non-bank lender. So it has both staffing and capacity to close quickly and to execute on these transactions quickly. These are for rehab transactions in our footprint. So it's not ground up new construction. It's ideally row house renovation. They do require some prior development experience. Projects are 1 to 4 residential, and they have to be sold for home ownership. The idea here is to create affordable home ownership opportunities. The sale prices for the end buyer is supposed to be up to $350,000 as we're trying to keep the product affordable. Here's some just quickly, they'll do most importantly 100% of cost, 65% of as renovated value, and there are no points on the front end. All the points are on the back end of the transaction. So it's designed to be easy. It's designed for folks who need to do small rehabs and need to do them and are challenged for capital at the front end. Again, the program is run by, unlike our program is run, we run through Dominion. Will Hayes has been nice enough to be our principal point of contact. We're happy to connect you to Will, and we're happy to facilitate, but hopefully that can also be an opportunity for you. And then there's Laurie's contact info. So thanks, Eric. Appreciate it.
No, that's great information. We had a lot of questions come in the chat that we'll get to at the end of the next presentation. So Mark and Lori, thank you very much from NIF. I'm sure that that all our participants appreciated the information. Our next presenter is Stephanie Estrada L, who is the project coordinator for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. And Stephanie, we're turning it over to you. You should be able to share your screen and share your information.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I hope everyone's having a good day. Today, I'm, like you said, Stephanie Estrada. I'm one of the project coordinators for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. And hold on, let me pull up my slide. Okay, can everybody see? Okay, so today I'm going to go over the trust fund program, what the program is, what we offer, the notice of funds availability, the revenue sources, and how you can apply. So, let me see if I can work this. I view Mark, I'm not too sure. Okay. So first, we'll talk about what the Affordable Housing Trust Fund is, the advisory board, the sources of revenue, the spending priorities, notice of funds availability, and then of course at the end, the Q&A. So first, the Affordable Housing Trust Fund is a new program in Baltimore City, and it's intended to support rental and for sale affordable housing for low and very low income households. The trust fund was established in November of 2016 by city voters, and it was approved a charter amendment to create the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. You can find the Article 1, Section 14 of the city charter. The trust fund requires that all the revenue be used to help those with incomes at or below 50% of the area median income, as established by the Department of Housing and Urban Development. This is actually in 2020, but HUD has just released 2022. But in 2020, a 50% AMI was approximately $52,000 for a household of 4, and a 30% AMI was approximately $31,000. Half of the fund does have to go towards 30% of the area median income residents. The trust fund is administered by the City Department of Housing and Community Development, and is overseen by an advisory commission that includes representation from housing advocates, developers, financiers, and others with expertise in housing and community development. The commission is charged with making recommendations to DHCD regarding policy, rules, regulations, and pertaining to the implementation, expenditures, and operation of the fund. Quick overview. This fund is to support low-income households earning 50% or less of AMI. Half of the fund has to support at or below 30% AMI, and the uses are for development, programs and services, and a 5% of the fund has to go towards administrative costs. Us at DHCD is the administrating agency, and we're overseen by an advisory board. The advisory board is made up, made up of, actually that should be 13 members, not 1. 13 members, and they're nominated by the mayor and confirmed by city council. It's comprised of members, again, with professional expertise, advocates, and city residents. The city residents portion of the commission is has renters at 30% AMI, a homeowner at 50% AMI, a homeowner that has benefited from the affordable housing program, and a renter that has received assistance. Some of their roles and responsibilities is to make recommendations to DHCD, advise, establish policies, implement rules and regulations. They have to submit an annual report to the mayor and city council, and they need to ensure a 4-year audit occurs. The commission is subject to citywide boards and commission requirements. The money part of the fund, this is the sources of revenue. There are 2 funding sources that funds the Affordable Housing Trust Fund program. The first source is a dedicated revenue stream that was created by way of an increased excise tax on all real estate transactions of $1 million or more. From this revenue source, we estimate an annual revenue of $13 million. The increased excise tax on property sales of $1 million is 0.6% 0.6% transfer tax and a 0.15% recordation tax. Some exclusions do apply to that. The second source is the city contribution. The city will contribute from the city's general fund yearly. In the beginning, it was $2 million, but it's going to go up and max out at $7 million. So next year, our fiscal year 23 will be at the $7 million mark. We do estimate to get $20 million a year. Revenue collected to date. So revenue collected to date is $46,949,614. And this is good through March 22. I'm actually waiting on April, so it'll probably be another $1 million or $2 on top of that. This is the Affordable Housing Trust Fund spending priority. So this money is broken down into spending priorities. The first one is the Community Land Trust, Choice Neighborhoods, New Construction Rental Housing, Preservation of Existing Rental Housing, Senior Home Ownership Repair, Inclusionary Housing, a Flexible Fund, and Rent Supplement. Out of these priorities, the Affordable Housing Trust Fund staff, such as myself, we control the Community Land Trust, New Construction Rental Housing, Preservation of Existing Rental Housing, and the Inclusionary Housing priorities. The rest are in other departments, and we just transfer the funds to those departments. The spending plans are posted on DHCD's website. Fiscal year for FY23 has not been posted yet. It'll probably be up in probably August of this year. The NOFAs, this is the NOFA information. We offered the New Construction and Preservation of Existing Rental NOFAs. We actually just launched one April the 27th. The link to apply to that is on DHCD's website, as well as the pre-proposal conference video is on the website as well. They will be launched every January, starting in FY23. Prior to FY23, it was random, but we're trying to create some consistency. So this particular NOFA will be launched January FY23. The Community Land Trust is going to be launched every July. So there's one coming up. July, we don't have a date yet, but we will give the date in June's commission meeting. The bonus NOFA, so for instance, this year we had a surplus in our spending estimates and our budget estimate. So if we have extra money, we will do another NOFA depending on the need. So like for new construction, we have a huge need for new construction. So it's a possibility to have 2 NOFAs set for new construction and preservation of existing rental. And that concludes my presentation. It's not as detailed as NIFS, but this is what I have. So if you guys have questions about anything, you can go on to the Q&A.
Again, great information. Thank you, Stephanie.
Let me see if I can stop sharing.
And we did have questions come in through the chat. I believe that our staff will go through the chat questions, ask them so that everybody can hear them. Right.
All right. So I'm going to pose the questions, and then pending time, we can take any from the larger group. A question posed from Ms. Evelyn. This is for NIF. What are the differences between your investment in the dark yellow areas as compared to the light yellow areas?
So the dark yellow areas in the map are the city's impact investment areas. We invest in all, actually, there's also a map with dots on it that are all over the place. We can invest in all parts of the yellow areas. We do try to target the impact investment areas in alignment with the city, and sometimes helps us from a mission standpoint, but it's not a requirement. Now that we've done enough loans, I think we've touched all the areas, and we're looking for more stuff to do.
Okay, another question. How do you know how much to borrow for feasibility costs if you haven't done the design and feasibility yet? Can you assist with locating sources of additional subsidies with your loans?
I can take the second one. We can try. We're not usually the, we do try to figure out where we can align with subsidy. You guys are usually your best advocates, and we try to sort of stay out of that, but we will try to do that. We will also, if we can, and this requires, I guess, kind of getting the fish on the hook a little bit, but to the extent we can make subsidy, it's hard for us to manufacture subsidy. We don't have it, but to the extent there is interest in subsidy, we do have some ability to try to structure around it. We've done bridge loans like that, where we've had, for Paul's Place, they had a lot of philanthropic support that was coming in over a period of years. And so rather than wait for all of it to come in, we bridged it, and we would do that wherever we could. I mean, our goal is to try to accelerate activity. And so if we can figure out how to help you, we certainly try to do that. We've done a lot of bridge loans of different types. But the flip side is, to be honest, you guys are your best advocates, and you know your projects probably better than we do.
Thank you. So our next question from Mr. Hannah. Does the bridge product only apply for residential or can it be used for commercial projects?
We've used bridge loans for anything. Where our bridge loans work, typically most funders want to be in the reimbursement business, not in the funding business, or they'd like to spread their funding over some period of years, or if they're public,
Right.
they need to wait for an appropriation. In all of those cases, we will look to lend against that to try to get the project to move forward. And so it doesn't, we've done them for community facilities, we've done them for housing, we've done them for whatever folks, can find funders. If funders want to fund in Baltimore, we want to help them fund in Baltimore. Let's put it that way.
Awesome. Great. Thank you. So another question is the minimum loan 500,000 or can the developer ask for less, say between 200 to 300,000?
Our problem on our side is generally that as a relatively small organization with not a ton of capacity, the fixed costs tend to swamp the economics at that level, and the transaction just doesn't work. We're going to layer on legal and other costs the good news of the fund is we have some ability to be flexible. And if they're, for example, to the prior question, if the grants are for different things, we can try to structure around them or work with them. The bad news of all those custom suits is it's not exactly efficient to bang out, loan after loan after loan, because they don't all look the same. And so it's really a size issue. That's one of the reasons why one of the principal reasons why we were anxious to try to stand up and would love to see volume grow on the Dash side, because that is meant to be more of a cookie cutter. I don't mean that pejoratively, but more of a repetitive product that can be done efficiently in those sizes and can be done with Dominion with somebody who's used to turning transactions quickly in those sizes. And so the goal was to create a separate fund that could originate and service those loans efficiently. Again, they're limited to acquisition rehab for home ownership, but that's kind of how we try to attack it.
Okay, thank you. This question, I think, is for both Affordable Housing Trust Fund and for NIF. This is from Ms. Brown. Can the loan funds be used to buy city-owned properties?
You want to take, for our side, sort of, but the problem is those properties generally trade at levels that are so low. And we're really, this came up, I saw a question in the acquisition side. We can do acquisition loans, for example. We've done, we helped somebody we helped a group acquire a shopping center with local ownership in West Baltimore, but it's an income producing shopping center. The challenge in most acquisition loans and city acquisitions is it's really a construction loan because the acquisition is a tiny portion of the capital stack and the home or the property is vacant. So the acquisition for us anyway tends to be really as a piece too small, and we really need to be able to do the whole thing to see it get done. So it can be part of the deal, but it's not really well fit to be the whole deal. Anyway, Stephanie, I don't know.
And for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, no, you cannot use our funds to purchase city-owned properties. You can use the funds for construction on city-owned property. So if you brought the property already from vacants to value, you can apply for the construction side of it to fix up that home with our funds. You just can't purchase it.
Thank you both. Our next question is, are you able to refinance down the line on the NIF loan?
You mean with somebody else? Yes. None of our loans have prepayment penalties. So we're in the get it done, bring capital into our communities business. If we get paid back, that's just fine with us. That's a good day for us. If that's what you mean by refi. We're not looking, the flip side, we're not looking to refi out somebody else's transaction to lower, if somebody's got a 6% loan with a bank or somebody, we're looking to have impact, there have to be a really good reason to try to recap. We haven't done it and I'd be hard pressed to think of it. If it's refinanced the other way, we're totally happy to get refinanced out all day long.
Okay. Next question is, are the construction loans supported through Dash priced at the same rate as the direct NIF loan?
No, I think it's on the term sheet. The construction loans at Dash are 7% on the committed amount. They're 1 year, fees all on the back end. It's flexible, but it's non-bank, traditional lending.
Okay. This is a multi-part question. What credit score is required to secure a loan? Also, do you have to have a certain income at your possession to qualify for the loan? And third part is, are you looking at certain debt to income ratio for the loan?
Oh,
If you'd like, I can break that down and again.
I'm not sure what I mean, if you're looking at, I'm not sure if we're talking about what kind of loans we're talking about. We do look at debt service coverage, and once we figure out what the structure of the loan is, we need to have adequate debt service coverage. Credit score, I mean, we're not doing, again, the dash target 600. So if that's the angle we're going for, there's a term sheet, there's an information sheet, and there's more information about dash on our website, or you can email us directly and we'll connect you. So that isn't a more individualized product. If that answers the question. On the, DTI, again, we look at debt service coverage on the project level. We're not really doing individual.
Okay. Question, this is for Affordable Housing Trust Fund, Stephanie. How is inclusionary housing defined?
The inclusionary housing, it requires developers that have projects that have 30 units or more to set aside 20% of those units for affordable for 30 years. 20% of those units need to be affordable for 30 years.
Okay. Questions are still coming in. Are new construction incentives for rental only, or can it be utilized for mixed use projects?
No, it is for rental. And when you mean mixed use projects, are you saying like for commercial and residential? And so no, it can't be used for commercial, but say you have a building that there's a commercial store at the bottom and you have residential units at the top, the money can be used for those residential units. We won't decline the project just because you got commercial at the bottom. The funds just can't be used towards the commercial part of your construction.
All right. This question is from Mr. Holcomb. Is there a size requirement for the preservation of existing rental houses? Does there have to be a certain number of units?
No, but applications with a large amount of units are favored. So I would advise to submit for a project that has multiple units. The goal for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund is to build units, and we need to, especially 30% in AMI units. We are looking, especially in this note for now, the projects with more 30% AMI units are going to be favored.
All right, thank you. Is the track record criteria the same for both nonprofit and for-profit organizations?
Is that for me?
I guess this would probably apply to both if both of you all want to take this.
It's the same. We don't.
It's the same for us too.
Yeah, for new construction, anybody can apply. Nonprofit or for-profit can apply for it. The CLT is the only one that it has to be a nonprofit.
This question is easy. Can we get, and Lori has just answered it in the chat, Mark Kaufman's contact information. So Lori, if you want to add yours, and Stephanie, if you could put your email in the chat as well. Are there any funds for historic multi-dwellings? That is Doreen Andrews. If she's still with us, I'm going to try to find her.
That's it.
Is that for me?
I'm guessing that's for you, Stephanie.
Okay. If you offer, if those units are going to be 50% and below, sure.
I am trying to find.
Teresa, there was a question from Michael Castanola.
I was just answering that one. I'll pick that one up.
Okay.
So I saw Michael asked about the opposite side of the street. So for those of you that have messed around with opportunity zones, you'll know that that's a one side of the street program, that the lines go right down the middle. As somebody told me, it's hard to do community development on one side of the street. So our map is also, since it's a map, a one side of the street map. So you'll find a couple areas on North Avenue, for example, where one side of the street qualifies and the other side of the street is not in the NIF eligible areas. We do have a process for that. We can get approval from, we run it through a committee and then we get approval from the city as well. City's on the committee, so it's kind of one and the same. But we've done one of them specifically, the Odell's project, which is opposite the Board of Education, is on the quote wrong side of the street. The south side of North Avenue is not eligible there. We got that approved. We had another project that we looked at that we didn't end up lending on, but that was approved in the Patterson Park area for an activity center that services a much broader community than just Patterson Park. So although the building was sited there, a lot of the kids that were using it were from around the areas. In general, what I would say is, and so we do these on a case-by-case basis. In general, the guidance we've gotten from the city has been, it's easier if it's on a commercial corridor
Right.
for the obvious reasons. And otherwise, we're really, we are still trying to benefit the area that we're supposed to be investing in. So there needs to be, sort of spin-off or benefits in a broader context. It's hard to do one house. We haven't asked, but it's, if it's residential and it's kind of, that's going to be a much harder thing. And actually the center that I mentioned, Patterson Park, was more than across the street. It was about a half a block or a block away. But again, it served a couple elementary schools that were in the adjacent community, which was in our footprint. So that's the guidance we've gotten, and we really take them on a case-by-case basis. Happy to take a look.
And that question was for the NIF investment area.
Yeah.
For example, Greenmount Avenue, 29th to 39th.
Yeah, exactly.
Are both the east and west sides of the street included? So
yeah, it's the same thing. The south side of North Avenue is actually not in the NIF area, but the north side is. Well, if it's on North Avenue in a commercial corridor and it's an impactful project, we asked before we got it, and we'd love to ask again.
okay, Teresa.
Awesome. We do have a few more questions. Eric, are we scheduled through 2:30 or?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Let's see. This one is for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Do you already need to have the units in order to apply for funding? For example, you have a number of separate row homes under contract. Can you group that together under the same project bid?
Yeah, no, you don't need to have the units already to have. As long as you have site control, that's fine. But one thing to be mindful of is that if you acquire that property before you are awarded and you want to be reimbursed for acquisition, you can't. You only can be reimbursed for acquisition after the time that you were awarded.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Next question. Can the Affordable Housing Trust Fund projects that mix long-term affordable rental and home ownership in the same project at 30% AMI? I think I may have read that.
Okay.
Did you get that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, for instance, this NOFA that's happening now, this is strictly just for rental. So if it's home ownership in it, I'm really not sure that will go. That would probably be a legal question that I can ask, but this NOFA is for that versus like this community land trust is for home ownership, even though we do have a community land trust coming up for rental. If it was for the community land trust, that is probably a bigger possibility for that to work for the community land trust. For the new construction, I really don't think so.
Okay. This question I can answer. Where can we rewatch the webinar? We are recording this webinar and we'll have this uploaded tomorrow afternoon at the Baltimore City Department of Housing and Community Development's YouTube channel. So this recording will be available to preview at a later time. Next question, can the funds be used on multiple properties at different locations at the same time? This may be applicable to both of you, Mark and Stephanie.
Okay, for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, yes, we do allow scattered sites.
We're not, again, that's going to be, I'm not sure if that's scattered site, single family housing, I think we'd look to Dash to try to do some of that. If there's some scale and synergy to making it a single project, then we'll be happy to take a look at it.
Additionally, for Affordable Housing Trust Fund, can the units only be reconstructed as rental units, or can they be sold as homeownership, as
No.
ownership?
No, they can only be used for rental. This is strictly a rental NOFA, not homeownership.
All right. Last question. I think
Exhausted.
we have two other questions. Can you speak to the process of getting funds for senior home repairs? I think that may be a different department, but if
It
Stephanie,
is.
if you have some detail.
Yes, so we transferred to a different department. I believe that's Hubs. And yes, you have to fill out their application and go through that process. I think I did not mention this in my presentation, but I should have. We have a monthly commission that's virtually, that goes every fourth Tuesday of the month. And in that commission, DHCD does an update on the funds for senior home ownership. And actually next week, May 24th, is the commission meeting, and we're having someone speak from the senior home ownership program. So if you want more information, you can come to that commission meeting. It starts at 6 p.m. and it does live stream to Facebook. You can get the WebEx invite off of DHCD's website.
Great. Let me see. I think there might have been a couple more questions. Teresa had to jump off for another meeting. Let me see. So I've never done anything concerning homes, although born and raised here. I've seen how some communities have gone down. Is this program beneficial to someone like myself who does not have any knowledge?
Is that for me?
Take
That's
that.
for
You want to take that
That's for
one?
both of you.
So for instance, for the new construction in the NOFA, we have a 10% set aside for small developers, but the definition for emerging developers is that you did at least 3 projects and no more than 5. So if you've never done it, it's probably not gonna work out.
Partnership with somebody.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
definitely partnership. We encourage that. That's actually in the NOFA, to partner with experienced developers. So if you have an experienced development team, that will help.
Great.
So I'm not sure if I'm going to take this one last, I think it's a question. I may have to have Doreen clarify, but it says back to historic multi-dwelling with 4 units and one owner lives in one near Reservoir Hill. So is the question about, Doreen, can you clarify the statement? Let me see if I can find Doreen here and unmute her. Doreen, are you able to unmute?
You might have to unmute her, or because
Yeah.
I think only the co-host can do it themselves.
Hello, this is Doreen. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I've been going through the housing department for a while. I have structural damage on the building, which I'm under codes, and it's been hard for me I have license on the property, but I can't have anyone in there because of the structural damage. And because my property taxes had overwhelmed me, because I paid over $100,000 since I've been there in property taxes. When I was renting out, I never got nowhere with it because the property taxes were so overwhelming. Now I was asking the city to help me, since I've been in Baltimore all my life. I was born here and raised here. And it's just like, there's a.
Uh-oh,
Oh, we lost her.
I think we lost her. Okay, well, if she comes back in, maybe we can finish the question and we'll try and reach out to her and see, how we might be able to assist her. All right, if there's nothing else, I want to thank everybody for your participation in today's webinar. Especially want to thank our presenters, Mark and Lori from the NIF, Neighborhood Impact Investment Fund. Thank you very much. Great information. And Stephanie Estrada from our Affordable Housing Trust Fund. We thank you very much for the information that you gave us.
You're welcome.
I want to encourage everyone to stay in contact with DHCD through our website. Subscribe to the newsletter so you continue to get updates about what's going on with DHCD. Our next webinar is scheduled for next Wednesday, the 25th at 4:30, and we will have Baltimore Community Lending on as the presenter. And so we encourage you to register for that as well. Again, thank you very much. And please feel free to reach out to DHCD or any of our presenters with any further questions that you may have. And we'll have a great day.
Thanks, guys.
Great job, everybody.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Eric, are you good? Do you need me to stay on for anything?
No, thanks, Kelly. Thank you very much. It was good information.
Yeah, it was really good. I'm gonna send it to a few people that I didn't see on the call that I think will really help. I learned a lot. I was like taking notes while
Yeah,
they
so
were
did
talking.
I. So did I.
Yeah, I feel like I wasn't looking at as many questions because I was just writing things down. But
Well, both the presentations had a lot of good information. So
oh yeah, I already like emailed Stephanie like, hey, can I can I ask you about this? But yeah, cool. All right, have a good
we
day.
need to try and figure out Doreen, see if we can get in contact.
Yeah, I'm sure if she registered, we should have the information. I'm gonna turn off the recording since we're just talking now.
Okay, right.